This is Ted Belman speaking to you. I'm the editor of IsraelPundit.org, and I'm going to be interviewing Mudar Zahran, the Secretary General of the Jordan Opposition Coalition. You may recall that Mudar and I organized a full-day conference on the Jordan option, which was held at the Begin Center in October of last year, and our joint activities, haven't stopped since then. So, Mudar, are you ready to go?
Thanks for having me, Ted.
Okay, my pleasure. The first thing I want to talk to you about is that there's been a lot of protests in Jordan. Can you comment on what's happening there?
Jordan has been engulfed into protests against the king and against the regime, which have been ongoing for over 3 weeks now. In fact, we're hitting the 4th week. The protests were sweeping and still remain sweeping the country. To name a few particular areas of engagement were Salt City, which is 9 miles away from Amman; Diban, which is the biblical Diban, which is barely 8 miles away from Amman's borders; Amman in the refugee camps, so-called refugee camps; in Zarqa, Jordan's 2nd largest city; in Kerak, Jordan's the southern city with the famous castle, Crusader Castle. The protests were very clear. People are targeting the king himself and his family. They're targeting his wife. We have told and warned right at the conference, me and my deputy, Abid al-Mala, we said that Jordan, this was back in October, we said Jordan will explode within the next 6 months. And there's very little time to save Jordan. And now you can see the results even prior to the time we set up. The protests are not new. We've seen these before, only this time they are targeting the regime itself. Renowned global media like the Times newspaper, the most renowned and one of the oldest papers in Europe, which is considered conservative, is reporting on it and stating clearly that the public is protesting against the king himself and not anyone else.
Well, let me ask you a question here, if I may. Who's behind the protests? What is causing the protests to take place?
People have had enough. People have had enough poverty, humiliation, apartheid. The apartheid includes the Jordanians of Palestinian heritage, the Jordanian of so-called Bedouin heritage, the Jordanians of the northern area. These are the 3 most discriminated against categories in the country, which basically together they make up to 95% of the population. Poverty, the king's injustice, oppression. He is a clean-cut dictator. That's what he is. We were very happy and pleased to announce that we proudly have instigated these protests and remain one of the main influences and guiders, the Jordanian Opposition Coalition.
So they're actively involved, I understand.
Yes, and this is evidence that those peaceful protests were instigated by us is by itself evidence and an answer to anyone who has doubted our ability to mobilize the street. And I would like to go on record as saying that we're not going to stop until the Hashemites all depart our country and until Jordan is free and a secular, progressive country.
Okay.
So we're not going to stop. We do influence the course and the geography of those protests.
What is the king doing in response? How is he handling the protests?
He can't do anything. The Jordanian Intelligence Department is a patriotic organization that stands by the side of the people. So does the Jordanian army. The king only controls his bodyguards, which is, a few thousands or even few thousands. And that's about it. He has no control over anything.
Now, some people are saying that the numbers are very small. Are they, and do you expect them to increase?
Well, seeing is believing. You can go and verify and check the videos of the protests. I don't care what other people say. We are on the front line. We are the ones, the Jordanian people, who are risking their lives and going against a dictator who's armed to the teeth. So what anyone else is saying from the comfort of their living room, either in DC, London, or Jerusalem, is basically irrelevant.
Do you expect the numbers to increase over the next few months?
Numbers are increasing every day. The numbers now fluctuate between thousands to tens of thousands, depending on the weather, the day, and this is only the beginning. We have had enough. We Jordanians have had enough.
Does the king know his days are numbered?
Excuse me?
Does the king know his days are numbered?
I can't share some of the information we have, but we know that he knows he's on his very last leg. This is the real deal. This is not like the previous Arab Spring where he was weakened, but still managed to maintain himself with the help of Obama. This is the real deal. The US and anyone else, I don't think anyone sees an interest in bailing out a dictator who has turned his kingdom into a foreign aid black hole.
Okay.
I can't see a way to save the king. Is there
any threat to your movement by the Muslim Brotherhood or by ISIS or the world order?
Well, the threat comes basically not from ISIS or the Muslim Brotherhood, because the Muslim Brotherhood is fully aligned with the king. While we are protesting, while the Jordanians are protesting against the king and his family, the Muslim Brotherhood held a mass celebration of the king's birthday. That tells you where the Muslim Brotherhood stands. And this should be the answer to anyone who was claiming that the king was against the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood equals the king. He falls, they fall and follow.
What is the king doing now? How much time does he spend in Jordan? Where does he have homes? Give me a little bit of the background of how he lives.
The king has already organized his lifestyle in exile. He has everything laid out, everything set up. This has been the case since 2015. And since then, he's working on bar time. He spends like a fraction of his time in the country, sometimes less than total, like less than 10% of the year. And this is documented with his visits. He spends a very little time. He has all his wealth, money set up abroad. We are in a good shape. The change in Jordan will mark a very historical landmark in the region. First of all, Jordan has always been, since the Hashemites took over, the beehive and the family's home for the Muslim Brotherhood. And Jordan has also been the main instigator of unrest regarding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Both the Palestinian-Israeli conflict and the Muslim Brotherhood have been the advanced tools that the globalists have been using for a very long time. That's why they have been aiding the king, because as long as there is a king in Jordan who is foreign to the country, there will always be a Muslim Brotherhood and a Palestinian-Arab conflict.
So let me ask you, it appears that Jordan is drawing closer to Turkey and Qatar and Iran and has major differences with Saudi Arabia. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, Jordan's king, not Jordan, Jordan and the 82-member royal family have been in bed with Iran, Qatar, Erdogan for the last 7 years. In addition to the Muslim Brotherhood, blessing and gluing all of that. It only came into the public eye. Basically, the king now is saying what he has been doing secretly for 7 years. And again, all of those who questioned what we've been reporting about the king, Iran, Erdogan, Muslim Brotherhood being close friends, all of those who have questioned us in the past should be very ashamed of themselves.
How is Saudi Arabia relating to all this activity? What do they want to see happen?
Saudi Arabia has always been a true ally of the Jordanian people, a true ally of the Palestinian people, and with this new and very pragmatic, very ambitious young man serving as crown prince, we're looking at a whole new different Saudi policy and a whole new different Middle East as an outcome. The Saudis would like...
Let me question you, because I always thought that Saudi Arabia was not a friend of the Palestinians, and they've excluded them, they won't let them come. There's all kinds of restrictions. And you
That's not true.
Friendly. Okay, clarified.
That's not true. Saudi Arabia has always welcomed Palestinian migrant workers. A Palestinian in Saudi Arabia automatically gets a green card. He or she doesn't get a citizenship. We cannot become citizens of Saudi. But this has been the case for the last 70 years. Any Palestinian in Saudi Arabia would never get deported, would always be able to stay upon arrival. I can't say any Arab country has offered the Palestinians that. At the same time, Saudi Arabia and this crown prince has offered the Jordanian people more than $7 billion in the last 3 years alone to support the Jordanian people versus the expense of the refugees and other things.
How does Saudi Arabia feel about the potential abdication of the king?
I can't speak for our Saudi brothers and friends, but all I can say is, what does Saudi want? Saudi wants the Muslim Brotherhood eradicated. Saudi Arabia wants peace, on a lasting and just peace with the Israelis, as long as it's comprehensive through a more logical and acceptable peace package.
What are chances of this peace coming out of the closet, of their relationship being public?
Let me finish, please. Saudi Arabia does not want Jordan to fall into the hands of the Muslim Brotherhood or Iran. And in this case, the King of Jordan has empowered both the Muslim Brotherhood and Iran in Jordan. This is very dangerous, and this could hinder Saudi's stability and efforts for peace. And that's what could change. At the moment, peace could happen, but we have a major obstacle on the way, and that major obstacle is the King of Jordan and his royal family. How can we target Iran and focus our efforts against the Iranian enemy and Iranian threat if Jordan has Iranians all over, all facilitated and welcomed by the Hashemite regime? If the Iranian intelligence, they have a whole unit operating in Jordan under the king's blessings, and nothing could be done about it for now, because the king is simply not respecting any of his so-called traditional allies, like the United States or the United Kingdom.
Right.
The king has turned himself into an obstacle. We take this chance to confirm our warning. Unless the kinglet, as we call him, or the so-called king, is ousted sometime this year, no later than summer.
So it's in their interest that he be removed from office, basically.
It's a mutual interest for the Jordanian people. It's an interest for the moderate forces in the region. It's an interest for anyone else who wants to see peace and stability thrive and expand.
Okay, what kind of economic relationship do you expect when you, let's assume that you take over, what kind of relationship will there be between Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, in your mind?
Well, we obviously are in the middle, and we would like to facilitate all forms of economic normalization with Israel. Between our Arab brothers and Israel, we've spent 70 years antagonizing the Israelis and the Jews in general. We gained nothing out of that, and I think most Arabs, and publicly even the Arabs even in the West Bank, they've come to a conclusion that this whole so-called conflict is not worth it. We want to facilitate the soil, land transportation, and we want to also offer tax exemptions and tax exempt environment, which welcomes Israeli businesses, where they can export their products to the Middle East as Israeli products produced in Jordan. And the sky is the limit The problem has always been economic. The Israelis have always been willing to invest their knowledge, their expertise, and their economics with us. We never offered a welcoming gesture. So it's time this changes. And as you see, the king is always his official media, he himself, as well as his, intelligence agencies, which he still controls, like not the general intelligence agency, the so-called Royal Intelligence Agency, which is a small intelligence office.
Well,
Those people are always antagonizing Israel.
let me ask a question. If the king falls and you're in power, what do you see happening with the Temple Mount? Because at the moment the king is responsible.
Thrive and expand.
Okay, what kind of economic relationship do you expect when you, let's assume that you take over, what kind of relationship will there be between Israel, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia, in your mind?
Well, we obviously are in the middle, and we would like to facilitate all forms of economic normalization with Israel. Between our Arab brothers and Israel, we've spent 70 years antagonizing the Israelis and the Jews in general. We gained nothing out of that, and I think most Arabs, and publicly even the Arabs even in the West Bank, they've come to a conclusion that this whole so-called conflict is not worth it. We want to facilitate the soil, land transportation, and we want to also offer tax exemptions and tax exempt environment, which welcomes Israeli businesses, where they can export their products to the Middle East as Israeli products produced in Jordan. And the sky is the limit. The problem has always been economic. The Israelis have always been willing to invest their knowledge, their expertise, and their economics with us. We never offered a welcoming gesture. So it's time this changes. And as you see, the king is always his official media, he himself, as well as his, intelligence agencies, which he still controls, like not the general intelligence agency, the so-called Royal Intelligence Agency, which is a small intelligence office.
Well,
those people are always antagonizing Israel.
Let me ask a question. If the king falls and you're in power, what do you see happening with the Temple Mount? Because at the moment the king is responsible for the Temple Mount. What happens after?
First of all, the king has no mandate. Nobody gave him any mandate to run Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Wall or any of that holy shrine. The place is holy to both of us, Jews and Muslims, very holy. And I think our love for Jerusalem and love for the holy shrine, Al-Aqsa Temple Mount, could unite us into a different arrangement, which is fair, at least more fair than the current arrangement. We have no question. We cannot deny Israel's and the Jewish people's love and merit to the place, as well as is our love and merit to the place. So
what's Saudi Arabia's position? Do they have an interest in the Temple Mount?
Saudi Arabia, we have to remember, the Hashemite regime has always been a cornerstone, a foundational problem on Al-Aqsa. And once we get rid of the Hashemite regime, hopefully through peaceful means, we can open the door for a new arrangement where Saudi Arabia could serve as a custodian. Saudi Arabia has served the two holiest Muslim shrines for the last 80-something years. The Saudis have the experience, the knowledge, and today the good intentions to run the place. I'll give you a very quick example. Saudi Arabia is literally at war with Iran. Saudi Arabia nonetheless allows up to 500,000 Iranian Shiite refugees, pilgrims to arrive and into Mecca each year. So that's 500,000 from the enemy side, who actually follow what we Muslims believe is almost a different religion. There was never problems from the Saudi side. Saudi never blocked them from arriving or performing worship. So the Saudis, they have the experience, and even, believe it or not, the tolerance of different ethnicities and religions on a Muslim holy shrine.
Well, let me ask you one more question about this, because I have my own idea that I'm putting forward, and I'd like to get your reaction to it. Namely, no one questions the Muslim right to manage their own holy sites, or for that matter, they shouldn't question the Jewish rights for their holy sites. As far as the Temple Mount is concerned, I think that no question Al-Aqsa Mosque is a holy site for Muslims, but similarly, the Temple Mount is a holy site for Jews. What are prospects of limiting the perimeter around the Al-Aqsa Mosque so that the mosque in that perimeter is what is holy to the Muslims, and allowing Israel to have full autonomy over the rest of the Temple Mount?
Well, first of all, any arrangement could never happen as long as the current King of Jordan and the royal Hashemite family are in control of the mosque.
Right.
They have been a problem to us, a problem to you, a problem to the Palestinian Arabs in Jerusalem, a problem to the worshippers, and this has been documented by everyone, including the Israeli government itself.
Yeah.
So once we get rid of him, we can sit together under the patronage of Saudi Arabia. We need to involve the locals of Jerusalem, the local Arabs, and the local Jews, the natives of the land, to find a new arrangement. And Saudi Arabia could generously and happily, be a patron, under the Saudi patronage. This could happen. Now, as far as the arrangements, we can't get to the nitty-gritty before we remove the biggest problem. But one thing is certain: we know that the Hashemites have been using the Temple Mount for political gain. We know they have been antagonizing the people. We know they pay money to the so-called women of the Waqf who stand at the gate and antagonize any Western non-Muslim trying to enter. We know that this has to end. And once the Hashemite rule ends, we need to remember that, first of all, they never had a mandate. Who's Jordan's king, really? He's not an Israeli. He's not a Jew. He's not a Palestinian Arab. He has no connection whatsoever to that holy piece of land. So we are better off arranging this with the Israelis, and we need someone as strong and legitimate in the Islamic world like the Saudis or the Crown Prince of Saudi to facilitate this, maybe temporarily or even in a different arrangement, have Saudi Arabia run the Muslim parts of the holy shrine. This is the only way forward.
Now, as you know, for the last couple of months, there's been talk about the Trump so-called peace plan. Arab papers have written it up. It's rejected by everybody. What's that all about?
Well, I know that President Trump has been doing everything to achieve an actual peace plan with all good intentions. On the other hand, what President Trump may have already found out is the other party, the Arab party involved, does not want peace. Because Abbas, Jordan's king, Erdogan, Qatar, all of Iran, they have thrived on war between the Palestinian Arabs and the Palestinian Jews, or the Israelis and the Arabs. So why would they want peace? Right now, the Americans are doing everything in the book to achieve a peace plan. Greenblatt, the president's envoy, peace envoy, is working very hard. Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates, as well as President Sisi, are offering help. The only problem lies in Abbas and Jordan's policy. They are refusing any peace deal. Basically, Trump doesn't have a partner. And so it's not his fault.
This peace plan, if it's ever tabled, you expect to be stillborn.
It's already stillborn, because anything that could lead to factual peace is not in the interest of any of the parties involved from the Arab side. Like, who are they? Jordan, Palestinian Authority, Hamas, Erdogan, Turkey, and Qatar and Iran. All of those people, they see no interest in peace. Even if President Trump comes and gives them everything they could yearn for, they're still going to reject it, because they make their money, they butter their bread through war, Therefore, I really feel sorry for all the effort that the administration has been invested with all good intentions because they don't have a partner.
Let me just ask a few more questions. Our time is running short. You know about the new direction that Mohammed bin Salman has taken in terms of ideology, in terms of normalizing and modernizing the religion. What are chances, do you think, of that coming to pass?
Very highly, because the source of all of the problems we've seen with the religion. Now, Islam has been around for 1400 years. Islam, there has been